Hi everybody, Home on Tools with James, and today we are making an aquaponics setup using an IBC. I'm going to take you through step by step what I do to turn this into a great setup. Let's go and take a look. So just a heads up, this video is a little bit longer, and if you do want to skip across, I've got chapters set up for you to make it easy. So if you are following along and you're wanting to make your own, you can skip to each step just to make it a bit easier for you. And if you do enjoy the content, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel for more content, more projects and some tool reviews. Let's get into it. Well, all right, let's start with a bit of overview on what aquaponics actually is. And I'm not going to go into any great detail. There's some great channels here on YouTube that do go into great detail. But basically what the premise is here is we've got an IBC behind us, or intermittent bulk container. We're basically going to chop off the top third. It'll be a couple of 100 litres, and we'll keep sort of 700 litre tank down the bottom. That tank is going to have fish in the bottom of it, and the top that we've chopped off we're going to flip. We're going to put some grow media in there. We're going to put our plants in the grow media that doesn't have any soil, and basically the excrement that the fish leave behind is going to be pumped up in through the grow bed, and that in turn is going to feed our plants. So that's a bit of a really brief overview of what aquaponics is. It's certainly something you can achieve easily in your own backyard, and something pretty cool, right? But the first thing we want to do is choose an intermittent bulk container, our IBC, really carefully. So the one I've got here behind me is a Schultz brand. From the research I've done here in Australia at least, the Schultz brand is definitely the way to go. They're built tough, they're heavy duty. There are some other probably less quality products out there, so make sure that you are getting a really good quality one. The other consideration too is you want to make sure you're getting a food grade container. These containers can range from having really harsh chemicals to use out on the farm through to a light wash type chemical that this one had in it. And the way you pick that is you want to look for a 2 on top of the IBC in a little triangle with some arrows, and that way you know you've got yourself a good food grade container. And the other thing you want to do is just make sure the IBC is not too beaten up, so look for rust on your cage. Make sure that the plastic bladder's in some good nick before you start, because you do want it to be on show and you want it to last a long time, and doing it yourself here you can certainly save a lot of money. So we've got our correct IBC, we're ready to go. Let's go get into some hands-on and take a look at step 1. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is remove the bladder from the cage, and what you'll find is it uses these torque screws, and you'll need a torque bit connected to remove these. So they're that star-shaped fashion screw or drill bit that you'll need to remove the cage. So we're going to start by removing these top 2 bars. We are going to hold on to these top 2 bars though, so don't throw these away. They come out really easy. Cordless drill is definitely the way to go. Just want to thread these out. We're going to put those aside. Alright, the next torque screws we want to take out are the ones that are down the bottom of the container. So these are screwed into the plastic pallet that you can see down the bottom, and there's a little bit of a galvanised shield over the top of the pallet. So we're going to go around and take all those ones off now. Let's go. So the screws around the bottom of the IBC have come out really easy. Just one thing to note, that these 2 here, so we've got one on this side and one on this side, they have a 10mm bolt underneath, so you'll need to get yourself a little wrench and make sure that you hold that while you try and get it off. And it's difficult to get the drill in there. There we go. So it's got these type nuts under there as well. Okay, let's get the other one off. Beautiful. Well, all right, so our cage is free from our base. As you can see, the cage is freely moving up on top of the pallet. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take it off the pallet now. Now this one I won't be using the pallet or the skid that's underneath. I'm going to be making it without it. I just think it looks better. So let's go and let's get the cage off this pallet. All right, we've got the base off. The next thing we want to remove from the IBC is these tin plates that are on the front and back side. Screwdriver will do on these. You can just sort of pry them off and we're good to go. We don't need them, so let's do that. All right, now we're going to move on to step 2. What that is, we're going to take a marker and we're going to mark around the bottom of the second rung all the way around. And this mark's going to be where our cut needs to be made when we pull the bladder out. And the top half up here is going to be our grow bed and the bottom half is going to be our fish tank. So let's go and mark it all the way around and pull this bladder out. Okay, so we've got the bladder separated from the cage, and what we're going to do is we're going to use a jigsaw to cut along the mark that we've lined here. And as I said earlier, this will be our grow bed, this side will be our fish tank. Now these are quite flimsy when they're out of the cage, you just need to take it easy. I'm just going to make a bit of a slot with a Stanley knife and then get a nice round cut all the way around with my jigsaw. Let's do it. Okay, so we've chopped the top off our IBC. Now what we want to do is take the opportunity while we have got it out to give it a good wash out. The jigsawing around the edge there has left quite a few burrs, so I'm just going to use a rag, run it across the edge, get all the burrs off so it's nice and clean. And I'll take the opportunity now to take a good rinse out of while the bladder's in two pieces before we put it back in and get our fish in. So let's go and do that and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, now we want to turn our attention to the cage. So for this step, what we actually want to do is cut a bit of an opening in the front of our cage so we can actually get access to where we're going to put the fish, so we can get access to the tank. To note with this, there's two sides to an IBC. One's 1.2 metres long on a 1,000 litre IBC. The other side's 1 metre. Now this is the 1.2 metre side. It's got the really tight cage front and back, which you'll notice. So I've actually made a mark on the middle two here to cut out. Here, here, here and here. So that's going to cut out a nice little window so we've got access to our tank. So let's make those cuts. All right, so I've made the cut here, and now would be the absolute perfect time to paint the cage. I'm actually not going to paint this cage because I'm going to wrap it in shade cloth. I'm actually got intentions to put this aquaponics setup in my greenhouse. However, I do need to touch up the spots that I've cut just so they don't rust. I'm just going to hit them with a bit of cold gal and then they'll be good to go. So let's get that done and move on to the next step. Okay, so I'll pop the bladder back in the cage for now. And what we want to do is just take a couple of wooden blocks. Now this is just some 2x4 if you like. And I've just taken a couple of blocks and I've sat them either side of the middle part of the cage. And what that does is just push the outside of the bladder up a little bit. Now these bladders get quite flimsy when they're cut and they're out. So to stop it sagging, put a couple of chocks in there. And what that'll do is when you see it at the top is makes it nice and aesthetically pleasing. It meets the bar around the top edge, which I'll give you a look at now. And then we're going to screw from the inside and fasten this bladder to the cage. I'll show you that. So just to give you a closer look at what I'm doing here, so I'm putting tech screws right up the top here around, and what I'm going to do is I'm starting in the middle bars and then I'm going to work my way around. And the reason I'm starting in the middle is because the bladder is quite flimsy. I'm going to pull it taut as I work my way around. Now the tech screws I'm using are galvanised, they're 5/16s, just driving them in with a 5/16 bit in my drill. Just go really easy with this. You can see that the light in the tank really does show where the bars are. So it's quite easy to do it. Just take it easy, work your way around, and we should get it nice and level and in place and not going anywhere. Okay, so we're making some great progress here. We've got the bladder attached now to our cage. And what we want to do now is get our grow bed. So the top part we cut off that you can see in the background there, we're going to get that put up the top. So what we need to do in order to make that happen, we're going to put a couple of sticks of timber running across. We're going to stick our grow bed on top of that, and then we're going to fasten our grow bed to the top of the cage. So let's jump in and do that. So I'm just using some, again, 2x4 here. The reason you don't want to use too big a stick of timber, so too fat, because what you're going to do is you're going to push the grow bed up too much, and then you're going to find that you're not getting, when we tech it to the, tech screw it to the actual cage, you're going to be coming in too low where the water is, and we don't want that, so it actually needs to sit quite low. Pro tip. We just sit him in like so. Just one other thing to mention before we fasten the grow bed to the cage itself. I've taken the lid off in the IBC. Now this does have a seal that sits in the top of the actual lid itself. But I bought some of this aquarium silicone sealant. This is Sikaflex brand 1. I'm just going to put a really good bead of this along the thread, just to ensure that I don't get any leaking at all from my grow bed back into my fish tank down the bottom. So let's go and do that before we fasten the grow bed to the cage. Okay, now similar to what we did for the fish tank down the bottom, we're going to tech screw the grow bed into the frame now on the inside. Now you'll see I've got some G-clamps with a little bit of 2x4 and I've placed it lengthways at the top. The reason I'm doing that is just to make sure I get the grow bed really level at the top so it looks aesthetically pleasing. And now I'm just going to drill through the back. Now you want to do this in a good bit of light so you can actually see where the bar is that you're going to drill into from the inside of the grow bed into the galvanised frame, because you don't want to miss and then you're going to end up with a hole in your grow bed, and we're running water through this, so we don't want a hole obviously. So let's get teching this. I'm going to start from the middle and work my way around. That way it'll push any slack from the bladder right into the corners and make it look all schmick. let's go and tack this to the frame. Okay, so remember those bars that we stripped from the cage at the very start of the video? I'm going to use those again now. So these are going to strengthen up the bottom of our grow bed. I'm starting at the back here now. I'm running them through the lid of the IBC. So there's a little catch at the top that needs to run through. And I'm running the bracket to the outside of the cage. On the other side, the side that you're going to see, it's going to be tucked up and on the inside. I'm using an M6 drill bit to drill through this, and then we're going to fasten it with a bolt. You're trying to push it up as much as you can up to the bottom of the grow bed, so it makes a nice sturdy bed for when we put our media in there and it gets quite heavy. Let's go and do it. Alright, so the next step is the fittings that we're going to use to both put water into our grow bed and then put it back in the bottom back into a fish tank, so as our recirculating system. What I'll start with here, and I actually bought a kit off eBay. I'll drop the link in the description, but I actually bought a kit already done, and it's made out of 20mm poly pipe. It's really quite simple. There's just a lot of fittings, and there's this guy that makes a pack together for this very purpose, and it was quite a good price, so I'll drop the link in there for you. But basically what we've got here is the inlet, so the pump's going to pump water up through this, and it's going to pump water into here, into our grow bed this way. You've also got this little inlet valve down the bottom here, so this is to regulate the water that is actually going into our grow bed. So if it's going in at too quick a rate, we can open this up a bit and bleed some water back into the system, into the bottom of the aquarium. So that's our inlet side. I'll discuss a little bit more when we've got water and it's all going. But we're going to put that piece in. It's got a little gasket here that's going to go through the grow bed. So I'll show you the install on that. And then we've got our outlet, and what I'm using here is a bell siphon. So again, we've got this gasket type thing that's going to go through the grow bed, and we've got the feed that goes back into the bottom down in the aquarium, and we've got this float that sits inside here. And what you might notice is that there's some grooves cut in this. This is some 90mm poly pipe, just some stormwater pipe. The grooves are cut in it, and this is the height that our water is going to recirculate in the top of our grow bed. So we'll have media up to about here, a little bit higher, and we've got this is where our water is going to sit, so right in our root base. And we've got this siphon here, and as it floats up, creates a siphon inside, and it bleeds water back down into this, so it keeps us our nice level back into the fish tank. So we'll do the install on this, and then we'll be able to discuss this more when we've got the system running. Let's go and take a look at the install. All right, so a bit of a look at what's going on here. We've got a low point where it dips down in our IBC. That is where we're going to put our bell siphon. So I'm just going to mark in the corner here with an X. And then at the high point in the IBC here, right at the front, this is where we're going to do our inlet. So I'm going to run across there as well. Now, I need to drill a 32mm hole for this hardware to fit through. So I've just got one of these hole dozer saws from Milwaukee. These are rippers, these. Basically going to drill through here, and then we'll be able to fit up our inlet and outlet. So let's do that. So just here I'm using primer and some cement glue just to glue all my fittings together. You want to use the primer just to clean your surfaces and take the gloss off the PVC pipe, and that way you get really good adhesion. And for a job like this, you want to use the clear stuff, don't get the red or the green. I'm using pressure stuff, won't need it for this, but using the pressure stuff, and it's clear, so it'll look really good. And it'll be permanent, so we shouldn't have any problems at all with any of our fittings leaking. Okay, so we've got the aquaponics set up now in our greenhouse in its new location where it's going to live. And we're moving on to the next step now, and we're going to be talking filtration and aeration. Now what I'll be using is a submersible pump. So in this sort of setup, you need to have a good submersible pump. Now you can buy a cheap eBay, probably $20 special. I decided not to do that. I decided to go with one that's got a little bit of quality. Couple of things when you are buying these pumps, make sure you get a submergible one. It is going to go down in the bottom of the tank in the water. Also, you need to make sure that it's got the right flow rate. So we're looking for around 2,000 to 2,500 litres an hour as a minimum. This one's 2,200. And the other thing you want to look at is the head height. And what that refers to is how high your pump can pump up vertically. This one will pump up 2.5 metres, so we've got no dramas here. But if you buy a pump, it might have the flow rate of 2,000 litres an hour, but it might not have the head height to reach and pump up the sort of metre or so that we need to there. So that's the pump I'm going to be using. Pretty basic unit, 19mm barb on the end of it. That'll pump straight into our plug, straight into our inlet that we were working through. So I've got that. The other thing that I'm running with this system, because I want to make sure I've got great aeration in there for the fishies, and I've got the same brand. It's an Aqua One, and this is an aerator, and basically it's got 4 outlets. And you can turn a dial, and basically these 4 outlets will just pump air and oxygenate the water for our fish. It does come with a lot of hose, so you can run to your check valves and your stones. I'll have 4 of these. So there's the check valves. They'll go in each loop, and then you've got your air stone. So these will sit in the tank as well and make sure that the fish get plenty of oxygen in the water and keep them nice and healthy and happy. So let's go and fit up our pump and our aerator, and then we'll meet back for the next step. So I'll give you a bit of a look at one of our air lines here. So basically I've cut 4 even lengths of our hose. Now right up the top I've got probably, let's say 100mm of hose that I've cut, and I've led that into our check valve. Now the check valves will have an in and they'll have an out. You want the in facing towards the aerator itself, so that's going to plug into the aerator. Now the aerator is sat up higher than the water level, so this is going to go down into the tank. Hence we need a check valve so nothing can go back up through. And then at the very end, I've placed one of these air stones, and that's just to make sure that the water comes out in really small amounts rather than in big bubbles, and it really really agitates the water and aerates the water the way you want it to. So I've got 4 of these. We'll go and plug them all in and then give you a bit of a look at what the finished product looks like.
Okay, so moving right along, we've got our pump in, we've got our aerator in, it's all looking really good. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we've got the environment for the fish nice and dark. Being in a greenhouse, lots of light, lots of heat, it'll heat the water up really quickly. And what that's going to do is cause algae bloom, and we don't want that. The tank will just be a big green mess and look horrible, and our fish will get overheated and won't survive. So we can combat that, and the really good thing that you've got in a greenhouse is by putting in the element of shade, you effectively make the effects of the greenhouse null and void. So what I'm using to do that is shade cloth. Now, I bought this shade cloth from a local hardware store. It's this is some 70% UV blockout, and I'm actually going to double it up, so it'll be pretty much pitch black for the fishies. So this is just going to be wrapped around the base tank. So the top's obviously going to be left out, but the base tank where the fish go will be pitch black. So I'm going to cut that to size, and then I'm just going to fasten that at the back with some of these UV stabilized zip ties. So the joint will be at the back of the tank, so you won't see it. It'll look nice and sharp, and these obviously won't perish because they're UV stabilized. So let's wrap our tank and move on to the next step. So our shade cloth's in place, should keep our fish nice and cool. I will probably down the track look at making a bit of a lid system up as well to stop the sunlight getting in the top. I'll depend on sort of how much algae I do get. I do intend to put some lilies in the bottom as well to help keep the water nice and clean. Now we're up to filling up the bottom tank. So I've got my hose in there. We'll start the fill now and I'll cycle the pump around just to make sure that we're moving the water okay. And then we'll move on to the next step with the grow bed. Let's take a look.
Okay, so we've got our water in and we've turned our pump and our aerator on, and we've been cycling water here for about the last hour or so, and the level is absolutely spot on, so it's working really, really well. If you have a look down in the bottom here, I did have to knock the ball valve just down a little bit. It was flowing a little bit too fast in the top bed, but we've got it dialed in now. You can see the return in over there, and then down in the bottom here you can see our air stones working away. You can see the water's got a lot of bubbles through it. We're getting a lot of aeration in this, so it's quite a treat. Let's move on now to the next step, which is putting the media in the top of our grow bed.
Ooh, it's hot in that greenhouse. Now we're going to move on to the grow beds. This is the next step, and what we want to do here is make sure that we've picked our media wisely. What I've got here today is clay pebbles. So I'll give you a bit of a look. These are 4mm to 6mm clay pebbles. Have a look at those. And these ones are specific for aquaponics setup. So there are quite a few varieties with these. So just making sure you get the right ones that suit aquaponics. Now they do come quite dusty and quite dirty. So before I put them in the grow bed, I want to give them a really good rinse because basically I don't want my fish tank to be super dirty and then have to filter all that out. So we're going to give them a bit of a rinse. I actually had a little bit of shade cloth left over from wrapping the bottom of the fish tank, and I'm going to use that just with a ratchet strap on the wheelbarrow just to make up a bit of a filter system. I'll put it on there, I'll rinse it with a hose, and we'll start filling up our grow bed. Let's go and do that. So you can see here I've just wrapped a shade cloth over my wheelbarrow. I just did it up with a ratchet strap, and I've got my clay pebbles, and I'm just going to put a bunch at the top. Once on the top. Now you want to make sure you don't lose too many of these. They are super expensive. They're the most expensive part of the whole kit that we're doing here. And typically, you know, it was about $50 a bag, and it's 45 litres a bag. So I've got 5 bags to fill up my grow bed. You know, essentially 225 litres. It's cost me about 250 Australian dollars. So this is the biggest expense. Everything else you can do quite cheap. So let's give them a rinse.
Well, alright, we're on the home stretch now. We've got our media in the grow bed, we're cycling through nicely. Just one last thing we need to do is put a bit of a filter in place. Now for now what I'm going to use is a bit of carbon matting. Now I bought this from my local pet shop. It's just the same brand as the pumps and filters actually, Aqua One. Pretty basic, straightforward sort of stuff. And this is going between the inlet and the grow media in the bed. And that's just to ensure that any solids get caught and keep our grow bed clean, because it'll get pretty nasty in there quite quickly. This is only a beginner setup, so I'm sort of having a bit of a play around with this, but as I get further down the track I'll probably build you know, a bit more of a substantial filter in there to filter out more of the solids. Then from then I'm going to have to leave this for a couple of days just to let the chlorine from the tap water dissolve, so it's nice and safe for the fish. I'll do a water test and then we'll get some fish in the tank, and we'll get some plants in our grow bed. So I'll meet you back in a couple of days. Well, alright, it's a couple of days later now. We've had the water cycling through, so we're just about ready to put our fish in and then plant some plants in our grow bed. I've actually just put 1 chemical in the water just to make it safe for our fish. And I've used a product called Chem Prime. And this one basically just detoxifies the water and makes it safe for our fresh fish. The fish that I'll be using, because I'm only new to this, I'm going to be using goldfish essentially. I'll give you a look at these guys. So these little guys are called golden comets. So they're just goldfish. Pretty much get them at any pet shop anywhere around. I am going to introduce some perch down the track and work these guys into another tank. But for now I'm going to start the system off with some goldfish. So I've got those, I've got 12 of them. And I'm just going to start off with planting just some fancy lettuce. So I'll wash the soil out of these and I'll plant them in the grow bed. So we're going to introduce the fish into our system. I'm basically just going to set the bag in the water here for about 10 minutes and just introduce some of the water in so the guys don't get too much of a shock into the water. And then we'll have a look at the whole system come together. So let's take a look. And there we go, our aquaponics system all complete. Look, I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And of course, your comments are always welcome. You've been home on the tools with James. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.